It's Shipp's Tips time again. It's episode 18, but we're not going to call it episode 18. We're going to call it episode 17 and a half because there is a massive thunderstorm coming over and me and Jake do not want to be here. One for his camera gear, and obviously we got loads of carbon on the ground. But one of the great little tips I'm going to give you now is something I've spoke about not just on Sonubaits videos, but on Preston videos as well, is actually not hair rigging the pellet, but actually hooking the band. And I've had several of you guys on my social media site saying, Des, I've been out, I've copied what you do, and it's absolutely brilliant. So that for me is proof of the pudding. So what I'm going to do is get back to my gear now and show you obviously the baits that I'm going to be using, which is basically hard pellets. And we all know how deadly hard pellets is wherever you're fishing, whether you're fishing for F1s, carp, and even sometimes skimmers in bream. So I'm going to get back and I think run you through all the most important little bits, you know, hooking the band, how it sits on the hook to catch the carp that I'm going to be catching today. We all know how deadly hard pellet fishing is, and honestly it is a simple way of fishing. And over many films I've always said to people, look, it's not always about hair rigging either. I like to actually hook the band, which is what I used to do probably 15-20 years ago before we actually started hair rigging. And I know hair rigging it plays a massive part, especially for me when I'm fishing shallow, and sometimes when I'm actually fishing long on the bottom I do actually hair rig, you know, obviously on the bottom as well. But on this short line like I'm doing today, that line for me is a great starting point for hard pellet, especially in match fishing, but it can also change as the day goes on. And you can change your hook length if you want, but I like to just sort of hook the band. I think it's a great way of fishing. For me personally, you know, speaking to some of you guys on social media, they've actually come back to me and said, Des, I've actually hooked the band instead of hair rigging and it's actually catching me more fish. So to me, that's proof of the pudding, and it's really simple to do. There's two different bands that I use. There's the medium one, which is like sort of my all-round band, if you like. I can do like a 4mm, 6mm and 8mm and even 11mm with that size band. Or there's the small ones. Now the small ones only come into my fishing really is when I'm fishing with 4mm. You can get the 4mm in the medium, but for me personally, if I'm actually banding a 4mm pellet, I do like the smaller bands. So it's as simple as just taking the band out of the packaging. And what I found over a lot of messing around on the bank catching fish, I like to go from the point end, so it actually goes inside of the band. I try and hook the band through the center of the actual ring to the outside, so it sits on there like that. So you can catch lots and lots of fish on that. You don't normally lose the band. You might only go through a few bands during the match. So if you hook it like that, I think it's the best way. Now I'm using 6mm today. So I've got a 6mm thin pellet. And you can use a pellet bander. I can actually do it with my nails. And I just put that over the top like that. Just adjust the band so it sits around the pellet nice. And then just push it slightly up the shank of the hook. That's a 16 GPM hook on there. It's one of my favorite hooks whether I'm fishing for, you know, soft pellet like I'm doing today, hard pellet, meat and corn. Rig is really simple. I've got a 15 Dura slip because I am catching lots of carp today, and I've got one of the strongest floats I've ever used for this sort of fishing, which is an actual inline diamond. I've got a 4B12 on there, and I've just got a few number 9 stots or shot depending what you fancy, and they're just strung out because this time of year you can actually sort of flick your rig out and you can catch quite a few fish on the drop even with hard pellet. Simple rig. I'm fishing about 4 foot of water like that, And it's a simple case of, I'm actually throwing a little bit of bait in at the moment rather than cad potting, you know, because I'm sort of trying to get me peg going. The beauty about this sort of rig, if I had a hair rig on there, you're sort of limited then to what you can actually put on the hook or on the band. On this rig, if things change, because I'm obviously a match angler, I can change that line to feed in with corn and meat. So I don't have to mess about, I don't have to take my hook off. All I got to do is take the band off and then start hooking meat and corn. Because later in the match, for me being a match angler, sometimes a hard pellet you can catch on it all day. Some days they're a bit wise to it, and that's when you've got to feed a different bait. Even if you want to put like maggots in there and baits like that, it's easy, just take the band off and fish. So there you go, it's all on there, it's nice and simple. Let's see if I can catch a fish. So I'm only fishing a top kit +2, which is one of the best lines I think for this time of year. Flicking it out, just chucking a few 6mm in. Just let it go down, lift your rig out a little bit, let everything settle. Like that. There's a lot of little carp in there as well, I think, so you're going to miss a few bites off them little ones. Don't overcook it though, just take it nice and easy, like 5 or 6 pellets to start with. And sometimes you can have such a great start. There's a little baby carp, I think that was. Yep, nothing wrong with that. It's always worth coming back sometimes, especially when you're fishing short, because it's easy to ship back. Just check everything's dead right with the band round the pellet, and it's just a little bit up the shank of the hook. And that's why sometimes when I fish long, I actually hair rig. There we are, look at that, perfect that. So I've just hooked that one, a few pellets. Feels like a nice fish, that. Just take your time, keep everything nice and low. I am fishing 15 Dura slip today because obviously there is some big carp in this lake, and I'm obviously going to be catching a lot of them, which obviously you're wear and tear of all your gear. 019 main line. So that's straight away. And that happens a lot, whether you're a pleasure angler or a match angler. Just keep it nice and simple. Try hooking the band rather than hair rig, and especially when you're fishing short like I am, and even down the edge with hard pellets. Because if you want to change hook baits, look at that, that's a nice common carp. And I just find, I just hook a lot of fish dead right. That fish there is hooked like right on the front of the top lip. The actual pellets come off, but the band is still on there, because obviously I've actually hooked the band. You can just bring that down and put another pellet on. Let's just hold him up for you, because it's quite a nice fish, that. Probably one of the smaller stamp that's in this lake, but the perfect stamp for catching on hard pellets. Probably £4. Typical carp that you catch nowadays in these little lakes. Let's get him back, let's get another pellet on. And I'll just check everything. The band's perfect on there. Just get him in the right position. Get a nice 6mm pellet again. You want to dry your hands off a bit, really. I forgot my towel today. If you dry your hands off a bit while you're doing this process, it makes it a lot easier. Just get the band over, get him in the middle of the pellet. Always try and get him in the middle or the center of the pellet. Bring him up that shank a little bit, and then you're ready to go. So obviously I threw a few pellets in whilst I looked at that carp, only a few, but we've only just started, so I just don't want to overcook it. And then going back to that, you know, using that rig with a hook on, I could even put a piece of corn on, If I'm getting problems with, yeah, look at that. Don't get better than that for a bit of filming, does it? So a few more 6mm in. Another nice fish that. Look at that holding the bottom. And if you want the proof of the pudding about hooking a band and how deadly it can be, that tells you. Hair rigging is amazing, but going back to sort of the old days, if you like, I think pays off. Especially when you're fishing the short pole. Obviously just change it to 8mm, or if it was harder, you know, you could just put a 4mm on. But with a 4mm, really, you want a small band rather than a medium. And it's like some venues I go to, I want to put a whole dendrobina on, big worm on the bottom, over me pellets. I can just take that band off, put a whole worm on, and you'll be amazed the difference in your catch rate. Especially venues with big carp in, big crafty carp. And you can even put a big expander on, a big pro expander, especially during the middle of your matches or your pleasure day when things have quietened off. Another lovely common carp, that. A little bit bigger than the other one, actually. So we're going to have a great day today. So keep things simple. Try hooking this. Absolutely hooked. Absolutely perfect. And I'm only fishing with a 16 hook. You could fish with a 14 if you wanted. So the band's still on the hook, ready to go. All I've got to do is put that down, put another pellet on. That's actually a really pretty common carp, that. Look at that. Typical hard pellet carp. Let's get him back. And definitely try hooking the band rather than hair rigging, especially on your short pole line.